Konnichiwa, YouTube. I'd like to talk about Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. This 1980s feminist classic dystopian novel from 1985. Ah, the 80s. The red baiting, the fear of Russia, the fear of a global war, trickle-down economics, America beating its plowshares into swords for this tired old man, senile, Alzheimer's patient that we elected king. It was such a different time than today. Well, actually, all that stuff's really still going on. I just turned on Rachel Maddow, and she's oh, it's Russia, Russia, Russia with her. Um, and of course, the trickle down economics and the senile president is still going on as well. But this book takes direct shot at the American right wing conservatives in power in the 80s, and they haven't literally let go since. And their base of Christian religious right support that enabled them, and their right-wing policies. In this dystopian novel, it's the environment that melts down and the human reproductive cycle, which causes a right-wing fascist government to seize power, and our only law is the Old Testament. And they use a handmaid's process straight out of Genesis to enable the elite in this fascist regime, the military government, to reproduce. Now, this is a fairly simple dystopian novel in that it's a very simple fascist, right-wing, Nazi-esque government, like the Nazis in Germany or Mussolini's fascist Italy or Franco's fascist Spain. It heavily relies on conservatism in the church, a police state, and permanent war internally and abroad. It's a militarized society and a fascist government with an elite at the top and an out of the control military expenditures and police state, and with no democratic processes. Wow, it sounds like America today, doesn't it? But in many ways, America is already rather fascist. Now, the anti-Christian message, you would say, in this book of extreme conservative values towards women, I think had more punch in the 80s. I don't think it carries so much now. I do think, women have actually more jobs today than men do, and I don't feel there's much risk of a return to those type of ISIS type values, although people are more familiar with them now because of ISIS and Muslim fundamentalism. But I don't know, I don't think even Christianity is a threat in the same way as it was maybe when the book was written. But on the other hand, since the book was written, many things have gotten worse. We're waging 8 wars across the globe. The military budget is much larger now than it was then, and the Cold War is allegedly over. And the police state has just insanely burgeoned out of control. I mean, it was just there's like 3 million people in jail now. There weren't even a million when even the Handmaid's movie, the original movie from 1990, was made. Now, the original movie starred Natasha Richardson, the late great Natasha Richardson, and Elizabeth McGovern playing Moore. And it was awesome. It was, maybe 1980s type production values, but it kept to the simplistic fascist state of the book. And it was originally written for Sigourney Weaver, but she turned it down. It was too controversial, and also Jodie Foster turned it down. But Natasha Richardson, fresh in from Britain, decided that, yeah, I'll take that. No problem. And it was... it's just a classic. I like the movie even better than the book. It has more of a solid ending. The book does but it's a very good classic. It's the first dystopian novel I read, and that's what really got me interested in dystopian novels. Of course, later I read Orwell's 1984, perhaps the most famous. It's not my favorite, though. Of course, my favorite is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I think it's the greatest one ever written. But also, Kurt Vonnegut's Player Piano is underrated. I never see it reviewed or mentioned. And Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here, which is the story of a country bumpkin, Texas uh, 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 demagogue who comes to power with a mix of promises and hate speech and declares war on Mexico to pull in votes in a time of fear. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It can't happen here. It can't happen here. But the book actually uses real characters like Roosevelt and Upton Sinclair and Father Coughlin, and it paints it as this news picture of America that's coming in mid-1930s, and it's America just hitting you rapidly like a nightmare as the worst of the worst unfolds. So many people have said it's very similar to living under Trump, but. But The Handmaid's Tale is a simple type of fascist government, and that's why it's recently been redone as a miniseries on Hulu, and they're padding it. They're talking about 3 or 4 seasons they're going to do. They've basically covered the book in the first 4 episodes if they wanted to close it out, but they're padding it. But the biggest change they've made is they've removed the racism from the fascist society, and now it's a race-blind fascist society. And that they're not putting people in concentration camps and resettling racial minorities. And that has never happened in a fascist state. There's always a scapegoated party, a race that's disfavored and locked up. I mean, that's the nature of a fascist state. So in the name of political correctness, they have destroyed any chance they could have of commenting on what Trump has used to rise to power, subtle racism. I would not say that entirely he was elected on racism. I think Hillary was an awful candidate, and people are desperate for something outside of that corporate system that she so thoroughly represents, and that Wall Street money. And it was her fault, and it certainly wasn't sexism, as Clinton was just blaming it on. And it was not. She was a terrible candidate, and people did not want more of the same. She put herself out there as the establishment and sold just identity politics and no solutions and no anger. And that's why she lost. It's not because she was female. And that's, in a sense, our society is totally over the sexism issue. It really doesn't really exist anymore. So I do think the message, the strength, this feminist message is not as relevant as Margaret Atwood would have made it in the 80s. I think it was more relevant back then. Let's just leave it at that. But I do think that they've really messed up in the name of political correctness and taking out the racist element, because of course a fascist government is going to come to power on racism, and then it's going to push racism. But so that's all, folks. Well, I'm just going to cut it here. I may have to konnichiwa.